the number one factor in getting through tragedies and traumas and loss is support, getting support from others. I do want to speak briefly about the difference between a loss and a trauma and a tragedy. I'm not ranking them. Any loss is significant to the person feeling it. It could be you lost your wallet, you lost your favorite pair of sunglasses, you lost a job, you lost your livelihood, you had to move. All of you may have lost a bird, a beloved animal. No one can understand your loss the way that you do. I am not in favor of ranking losses. In my many, 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 many years of grief work and support, which I've done through Grief Share in a spiritual setting, and I've done other types of just emotional support over the many years here with my Living Swell wellness coaching and emotional support, I have found that sometimes there's a tendency for people to rank their losses and compare them to other people's. Personally, I don't find that helpful at all. Everyone's loss is significant to them. I will also say in my own experience that I have had extended family members that have passed away. And I've had my own family members that have passed away. I've had my own beloved animals that have passed away. And I have had other losses in my life. And you can't even compare the humans to the animals, because for some people, many people have had the loss of animal companions that were like their family. So I'm just stating this by way of saying, anyone who has had a loss, my heart goes out to you. Now, in terms of tragedy, there are losses. For example, I've had family members that lived long lives and they passed away without trauma, meaning there was no lingering suffering. They weren't in a hospital. It didn't appear that there was any undue physical suffering that they endured. So that is a loss by all means, but I didn't see it as a tragedy, unlike someone whose life is lost at a younger age, or there was undue suffering, or there was a murder or something else that happened. That adds another layer to that person's dealing with their loss. So for me, there are tragic losses, there are traumatic losses, there are complicated losses. And I just want you to understand that your loss is individual, it is significant. And my number one support that I can give is to find someone that can support you in that. I've titled this episode, Grief Needs a Witness. I didn't come up with that phrase, but when I heard it, I immediately resonated. It immediately resonated with me, and I claimed that phrase, and I wanted to share it with as many people as possible. In my own experience, I'm actually a person who is rather a private person. You might not think that, given that I share so much publicly on these platforms, and I actually enjoy offering support and encouragement to thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And that is something that God has called me to do. But when it comes to my own life and my own grief, there have been times when I am I have isolated myself. I did not want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to spend time with anyone. I didn't even want anybody to help me. In fact, I didn't even really want to get through my grief. I felt that the more I was suffering, the more I could have validation that my loss was significant. So I understand that as well. If you feel that you want to isolate, you want to close the door, you want to pull the covers over your head, you don't want to talk to anybody, you want to turn off your phone, you don't want to answer your emails, and you need to do what's right for you. It's understandable that in the very first stages of loss, there is shock. And there are all sorts of stages of loss. And I personally have not experienced them exactly in a linear direction. For me, they have doubled back, and then I'll go through one and then go through another. But some of those that are identifiable are shock, where you are literally in shock. You may not even be able to respond with tears or shouting or anger. You literally are frozen. And it's likely that that's a way that the body protects itself. And that everything kind of shuts down and we literally are frozen. Another phase during our loss can be anger. Actually, pretty much before anger comes denial for many people, where I don't believe it. I don't think this happened. You've got it all wrong. And this happened actually during all of the hogwash that was sloshed all over us. There was a type of shock when that trauma was inflicted upon us. And many people were frozen. And then there was a denial. This can't be happening. I don't believe it. I still don't believe it all these years later, in terms of what we were told. And that is understandable. So I would like for you to be patient with yourself, to be compassionate with yourself, to take this time to just accept and experience whatever phase of loss you are going through. Typically, people will also experience anger, and that anger can come out in an active way where you're shouting, you're yelling, you're screaming, you might be throwing things, hitting a pillow, hopefully doing it in a safe manner where no animals are hurt. You're not throwing plates, although there are places where you can go and called break rooms and throw things and smash things. So anger is a very normal and understandable response. And again, that can come in waves and it can exist for years. You probably know someone that is an angry person, and they get angry over things that seem inconsequential. They may blow their lid at things that aren't, in your view, that important. It's been my experience that people that carry on a lot of anger have never worked through their losses, whether it was something that happened to them, maybe there was a wrong that was inflicted upon them, or maybe it was the events of life that they experienced, or there were losses that they never quite were able to work through adequately. And so that anger has stayed with them a long time. There may be things that you or people that you know regret and have a deep sense of remorse. And that can also be expressed in anger, that you're so angry at yourself and you didn't forgive yourself or the events of life or even those that harmed you. And while my husband, Pastor David, is more of an expert on forgiveness, I am more of an expert on, well, how do I put it this way? You need to be compassionate with yourself, even if you haven't forgiven any of those wrongs, because then that adds guilt. And those are additional emotions that many of us feel in times of loss. So guilt and remorse. Why didn't I? I should have. I shouldn't have. Why wasn't I there? Why was I there? Why didn't I go? Why did I go? There are a million questions that we can ask ourselves. And in my experience, that type of remorse and grief actually delays your ability to grieve fully and to work through your grief. Let me talk about what that even means, grieving. I suppose I should have come up with a definition before we even started this concept and talking about grief. So there is, when you have experienced a loss, you are feeling all of these emotions: shock, denial, anger, sorrow, regret, remorse, outrage. There are so many emotions that some of them are even inexpressible. There's a pain and a loss that doesn't even have a word for it. For me, grief and grieving is working through all of those emotions, not denying them, not berating yourself for having them, not criticizing yourself or others for their expressions of loss and sorrow. What happens is we can look at someone and think, I wouldn't be acting that way. I wouldn't be reacting that way. I would be sobbing, or I wouldn't be sobbing. I would be angry, or I wouldn't be angry. I would focus on the past, or I would focus on the future. Everyone has their own way of expressing their sorrow and their loss. So that is valid, and accepting that and allowing for that, especially with yourself, and not adding more pain on top of your sorrow by criticizing yourself or others for how they're working through that. So for me, grief is the process of experiencing all of these emotions. And it takes time. I still grieve losses I had when I was 20 years old. Now, I'm not stuck in those losses. I'm not allowing that to run my everyday choices and decisions and outlook on life. But if I spend time to think about some of those losses, it can still bring up the sorrow, the longing, and all of the other emotions. So for me, the grieving is expressing the emotions physically, such as anger. There's no harm in throwing some pillows, punching a pillow, going in your car, shutting the door, screaming at the top of your lungs. I actually find that very therapeutic. I can speak from experience. There's the expression of sorrow. The physical expression of sorrow includes tears, sobbing. You may not want to get out of bed. You may want to pull the covers over your head. You may want to get a hug or give a hug. You may want to isolate yourself, or the exact opposite. You may want a shoulder to cry on. So there are physical expressions of these emotions. And then I find that writing about what you are going through when the time comes, I'm not talking about forcing you or putting you on any time frame, but when you feel that there's something more that you want to experience and process is really a good word to use. Writing about it has been for me very, very powerful. I can get down my emotions, my anger, my regret, my sorrow, my frustration, my overwhelm, my indignation, my outrage, all of those things I can get out on paper. Something happens when you take a pen onto a piece of paper. I find that for me personally more powerful than just doing it on the computer, although that's an option. Or you could even do a text memo to yourself or leave yourself a phone message. Somehow get these emotions and feelings and words out of yourself. It's very, very powerful. And this is where I say grief needs a witness. If you can find someone, ideally not a family member. The reason I say not a family member is because our lovely family members want to help us feel better immediately. And they may say things like, it's okay, you'll get over it, it's better this way, that's how God wanted it to happen, you'll get through it. And all the while, or you want to sob and cry. And hopefully I'm not buffering here, friends. It looks like I'm having a little internet slowing, but I'll just keep talking. Having a person like a friend, a trusted friend, not so, and if you don't have that and the only person is a family member, then by all means do so. But a trusted friend that can sit with you and actually just listen without trying to fix anything, without trying to say that things are going to get better, because in that moment of deep loss, no, things aren't going to get better in your mind. How could they? Everything is changed. Everything is lost. Everything is dramatically different. You don't want to go on. You can't imagine going on. So this person is like a lifeboat for your soul. All right. They're there to support you as you work through these emotions. It's not going to be a one-time thing. This could be over many, many weeks, months, years. And ideally, you are able to integrate, meaning you're not going to forget, you're not going to move on. You're going to, just like you have a scar on your body, it will be with you forever. And you will figure out a different way of living your life with this loss, with this pain, with this sorrow. Many of you have been on board with me for years now, and we have all gone through a period of loss and trauma over the last few years, whether or not you actually lost a loved one. I think many people have. When you are confronted with images such as those coming out of Maui, or even not looking at the images, but hearing it, that can trigger another sense of loss, because our minds, so amazingly created by God, have this desire to connect our experience with the experience of the outer world. If you find that looking at this this footage, the images, listening to the podcast, if you find that this is stirring up additional pain, feelings of loss, of overwhelm, of sorrow, for heaven's sakes, you don't need to expose yourself to that. If you are a person who has something immediately that you can do to help someone on Maui or in Hawaii in general, then taking action can help you be more based out of the emotional realm and into the active, intellectual, practical aspect. And that will give you a break from all of the emotional heaviness. My recommendation is, if you don't fall into that category, if you don't live there, if you don't have family members or friends, I highly recommend that you take a break from this coverage. Now, I know that I'm bringing a lot of videos on this. My goal is to shed some light for those people that are asking questions. And my other goal is actually to bring encouragement to those that have a sense that something isn't right here. And there are many people I know who can see that something's not right in terms of what happened, yet their family members are dismissing it, or even worse, they are criticizing them or shunning them. I had a healthy American tell me that she was canceled by her family over the previous hogwash, and that they just didn't even want to talk to her anymore. And so that's another loss. So the reason I bring this footage and the reason I bring the coverage, and I talk about my interpretation of the events, and I bring evidence, and I'm looking at information that I can present, ideally without a lot of emotion. I always seek to not share any traumatizing images. I really look at what I'm doing here. But if you find that that is troubling to you, please do not expose yourself to that. I started to say one of the reasons I do this is to support people who know that something isn't adding up, but they can't find anyone else to confirm that for them. And then they start doubting themselves and their own God-given discernment. So a large part of the reason that I bring this information is for my subscribers who are saying, Peggy, what do you think is going on? Here's what I think. And then when we look at that and we can support each other, again, grief needs a witness. We need to support each other. So that is one way that I seek to be helpful. Trust me, it is very, very difficult to do this kind of digging and researching and reporting. And I actually took a break this weekend from it, although I will be back, maybe doing some shorter videos, a little more concise, that you can share with people if you're interested. I want to say one other thing about loss and trauma, tragedy, and sorrow. I've noticed in my many decades here on Earth, especially in my animal rescue world and work, where people are exposed to a great deal of horrific loss, much more than most people who are not boots on the ground and being exposed to the types of things that are out there. The irony is that it's people with a tender heart and a compassionate heart that want to prevent this kind of suffering. And there are others that are doing that with children and, child abuse and so forth. God just called me toward the animals. So what I've noticed, and it's interesting to me, let me know if you have noticed this, or maybe this is the first time you've heard of it. Sometimes it seems that in order to make sense of a person's own loss and sorrow, that if they turn their attention to something even worse, as I say, because worst is worse than worse, if they look at something even more traumatizing, more just heinous and devastating, it's almost as if by comparison, their own loss is not that bad. It seems to me, and I totally could be wrong, but it seems to me that some people are trying to heal their own hurts by diverting their attention to something even worse. And that's something that I have coined being addicted to drama or addicted to fear. And I've noticed that, not you lovely subscribers, but there are some that email me. And if you're interested in emailing, it's support@thehealthyamerican.org. And I've noticed that some people, it's almost as if they need that everyday hit of a drama, and they're emailing me unrelated events that I don't even cover, almost as if to say, did you see this? Did you see that? Did you see that? Look what's going on here. What's going on there? And they're trying to cover everything from Ukraine to aliens to, January SIX. I don't know if I can say that on this channel, to the elections, to anything you can imagine. And trust me, all of those things are valid, but I don't cover those things. Okay. I talk about your rights. I talk about on this channel, your emotional and physical well-being. I talk about how to get through the stormy seas, but I have never and will never cover a lot of these other stories. Number one, I'm not going to expose myself to that. Number two, there's nothing I personally can do about that. It's not my area of expertise. But the bigger point that I'm trying to make is there are people that are addicted to the drama, addicted to the tragedy. And sadly, to me, it appears that they are becoming inured. They're becoming conditioned to this, so that it takes more and a bigger tragedy for them to even feel something. I don't want to become that person. I want to still be bothered, and that's not even a strong enough word, outraged and moved and horrified by these things, which is why a lot of these movies that are out there, and I'm not going to watch them. I personally am not going to subject myself to those images and to that. There's nothing I personally am involved in that is going to change that. So think about your own life. Where can you dial back your exposure to this trauma? You've got enough of your own to deal with. I know you do. So the bottom line is find that supportive person. And if that person is me, I want you to come to our monthly live Q&A webinars. And my husband, Pastor David, and I pray for you. We take your questions live. We answer your questions, whether it's about how to keep your job, how to find a new job, what to do if your spouse doesn't see eye to eye, if you're feeling overwhelmed. We offer you spiritual, emotional, and hopefully intellectual support in all of these areas. Now, this Q&A webinar is for our financial supporters. The financial supporters are those like you that have sent me a check in the mail, which I really appreciate. I have a link for you in the description box below if you find value in my work. I am doing this. I am not monetized on YouTube, which means no ad that runs on my channel am I ever paid for ever. In fact, YouTube has several hundred of my dollars that they won't give me. In the early days, I didn't even know there were ads running on my channel. And then they suddenly shut it off. So it's called not monetized. I do have a couple of sponsors that I do receive some financial support from, but in terms of YouTube, I make $0 from YouTube at all. So for those of you that have or donated online, which is also a link for you below, or if you are a subscriber to my Substack is like a blog, and I publish one a week, sometimes two a week, and these are detailed research with links and information if you are the type of person that wants to really dig in and do the deep dive and go down the rabbit hole. So if you're interested in that, it is free, but you can also do a paid subscription. And that's another way of getting support when you're just like you're online here. You have the chat, you can email each other if you want to share your email address. You can support each other with your encouraging comments. And then those of you that are on peggyhall.tv, which is basically a repository of all of my videos with all of the ads removed, you also are invited to this monthly get together. And it's the last Saturday of every month. Let me know in a comment if you have been on that live webinar, if you have found it to be valuable. I love it because it's private and I don't have to speak in the code words, although you all told me you like my code words. So it's our own language that we can use. I can be that support for you. It's very, very important that you voice and write and physically express what you have gone through. If you don't do that, it stays in you, in your spirit, in your physical body, in your mental energy, and it will distract you. And at the very least, and at the very most, it could be the reason for some of these health maladies that people experience, especially grief is, right? We say, oh, I have a broken heart. And when you cry, you're heaving through the lungs. So the lungs and the heart are definitely directly affected by sorrow and loss. So when people start having heart issues, breathing issues, lung issues, throat, all of this kind of thing could possibly be linked to this sorrow that was not expressed. So I'm going to wrap up here, friends. I do get on a rant sometimes, and I flip my lid with outrage when I see that there is so much intentionally inflicted pain by those who serve evil. And I'm here to serve good, to serve God, to serve you. So I'm so grateful that you're here on board. I do want to take a look at some of your comments here. And we've got Rhonda. DJ says there are many layers of loss. There are so many. Let me know in a comment the different things. When you lose a loved one, you not only lose that loved one, but you lose your dreams. You lose someone who did things for you, someone you did things with. When you lose your health, you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not able to do the things that I used to do. Am I going to be more dependent on someone? Losing your financial footing, I think for many people is at the top of the list, because how do you go on if you don't have the financial means? And again, that's where getting support from others. And by the way, if you don't have a penny to spend, please do not send a penny. Your prayers are so powerful and important to me. So having someone and expanding your circle of people, I think is very, very important. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. I am supported by you. I love doing these live streams because I know that I'm going to come on and I see the Healthy American family, and there are supportive comments. You're sophisticated, you're savvy, a little snarky when the time calls for it. But today was a little bit more of a somber broadcast. And I just wanted to let you know that I am praying for your strength, for your perseverance, for your discernment, for your ability to get out of the emotional realm and into the more intellectual and mental aspects, so that you can take a break from that emotional despair. And then my main prayer is that you will find those that will be a witness for what you are going through. And